On this edition of the Ball Diamond Podcast, we go around the bases to catch you up on the week that was in Major League Baseball. Then we talk about Jackie Robinson Day, along with talking about Carlos Rodon's no-hitter. We finish up giving you the series of the week. All that and more coming up right here on the Ball Diamond Podcast. That's right, welcome into the program. Glad to have you aboard. We will get you caught up from the week that was in Major League Baseball with circling the bases. We will talk about Jackie Robinson Day. We will also get into the no-hitter that happened this week on the south side of Chicago, which was the second of the Major League Baseball season. And then we will wrap up with our series of the week. But before we do all that, I'd like to remind you that you can stay connected to this podcast through our social media pages. Facebook, Ball Diamond Podcast, both Instagram and Twitter at Ball Diamond Pod. And hey, while you're on YouTube, why don't you go over and hit the little subscribe button. It allows you to get updated on any new content that's uploaded on the J-Man Sports YouTube channel, whether it be with this podcast or the J-Man Show or anything else that has to do with J-Man Sports. You will get updated, and honestly, it's just one little button away. So why don't you go over and hit the little subscribe button on YouTube. Or as we do each and every week at this time, it is circling the bases. Circle the bases on the Ball Diamond Podcast. We start at first base with some of the scores from the week that was in Major League Baseball. We start with our series of the week, which happened a little bit earlier on in the week, between the Tigers and the Astros. It was the Tigers with a surprising 3-game sweep over the Astros in Houston, where it was, of course, A.J. Hinch's return, first time that he had been in Houston since being fired by the Astros. Now, the Tigers would continue their West Coast road trip in Oakland, where their luck would run out as they got swept by the A's in a 4-game weekend series. Yankees' troubles continued as Sunday they lost to the Rays again, not only getting swept by Tampa Bay in New York, but the Bronx Bombers were handed their 5th straight loss of the season, pushing their record to 5-10, which is the worst in the American League. First time the Yankees have had the worst record of the American League since 1968. Meanwhile, the Red Sox, who donned some very interesting jerseys this weekend, continued to roll as they have the league's best record at 10-5. They are currently playing against the Chicago White Sox in Boston for Patriots Day. Moving to the National League, the Dodgers and the Padres wrapped up a fun 3-game weekend series in San Diego that had the Dodgers taking 2 of 3 from the Padres. These two teams will face off later on this week in a 4-game series, which should be very interesting. Let's head to second and catch you up on some news and notes from around Major League Baseball. First off, it was Jackie Robinson Day this past week around Major League Baseball, where all players donned the number 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson, the first African-American baseball player. He broke the color barrier not only in baseball, but in sports as a whole. Astros players Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Martin Maldonado, and Roble Garcia were placed on the COVID IL list earlier this week, but as of Sunday were cleared to start working out. Dodgers slugger Cody Bellinger found out that he has a hairline fracture in his left leg, meaning he'll need to spend more time on the injured list. If you can remember, last week he went on the injured list for a left calf strain. Tigers hope to get former 2-time MVP award winner Miguel Cabrera back this week from a left bicep injury. To third we go. Players of the week for the first official week around baseball were named last Monday. The AL Player of the Week award went to Red Sox slugger JD Martinez, while the National League award went to San Diego starter Joe Musgrove, who completed the franchise's first no-hitter. As we send you home, we actually had another no-hitter this week, if you listened in the opening. On the south side of Chicago, White Sox starter Carlos Rodon pitched the second no-hitter of the season on the 14th of April against the Cleveland Indians. Rodon had 7 strikeouts, allowed no hits and no walks in the performance, the only blemish coming in the 9th inning, hitting Indians catcher Roberto Perez. And that is Circling the Bases. Circle the Bases is brought to you by J-Man Sports, any and all things sports. Alrighty, so let's talk about the Jackie Robinson Day. It was this past week, and now, if you are new to baseball, Jackie Robinson is a pioneer. He was the player in Major League Baseball that broke the color barrier. He became the first African American to play baseball, and I very much would recommend watching the movie 42 if you don't know anything about Jackie Robinson, just because that movie does a great job in depicting all the hate and all the frustrations and everything that Jackie had to go through when he became the first African American player to play in the major leagues. From anywhere from the opponents not liking him, the fans not liking him, opposing managers not liking him, his own team not liking him, and you really get to learn a little bit about Jackie Robinson too, about the strong character that he is, and that he had to fight. He had to fight to not fight back, basically. He had to restrain himself. He had to take it. He had to show people that what they were doing to him was wrong and not retaliate by going after them. So it's a great movie, and if you are into kind of those types of movies, I very much suggest to watch 42. The late, great Chadwick Boseman is he is Jackie Robinson. He plays Jackie Robinson in that movie, and I thought he did a fantastic job. It's just a spectacular job. So like I said, if you want to learn more about Jackie Robinson, really watch that movie. Start there, and then you can start reading some things about Jackie Robinson, and it's incredible what he was able to do and what he went through. Honestly, I mean, just to play a game is remarkable. And he didn't just stop with baseball. He was fighting for equal rights, and he was a pioneer in many, many different ways. And again, he kind of was a pioneer for all the major sports, to allow these African Americans, allow these black athletes to play. And it wasn't even just African Americans. It was even Latino players as well, allowing the black Latino players to now come in and play, which is we see a lot of those. We see a lot of guys, a lot of black Latino players in Major League Baseball, and like I said, his impact on the game is tremendous, and that's why it frustrates me with what Major League Baseball does with Jackie Robinson. So they have a day or two. They usually have 2 days now because they obviously, with teams and having off days, they like to try to get every team to participate, obviously. And so basically like a 2-day event, but Major League Baseball does a terrible job at marketing it beforehand, I think, but baseball does a terrible job marketing its own sport, so I guess I shouldn't necessarily be all that shocked they're terrible at promoting Jackie Robinson Day. The other thing that frustrates me is that it only gets basically those 2 days of the year, and that's it. I mean, yes, Major League Baseball does do their part in September when they honor former black baseball players and African American baseball players and I think they do a good job with that. But I'd rather them do more. I think they could do more, and here's why. So I mentioned it in Circling the Bases, right? That the Red Sox were donning some very interesting jerseys this weekend because Nike took over as the official sponsor of the Major League Baseball uniforms. So they make the baseball uniforms now. And Nike is also in with the NBA, right? And so what does the NBA do? The NBA introduced a few years ago these like city jerseys. So it's basically like these jerseys that, they try to best represent the NBA city. and they do them from time to time, where the NBA team, or especially the home team, will wear these jerseys. Again, doesn't happen all too regularly, but it happens throughout the season. And I think the Pistons ones, being a Pistons fan, I think the Pistons ones are pretty cool. And I think that overall, I think like they are pretty cool jerseys to look at in the NBA. But the NBA and Major League Baseball are completely different. The NBA is more modern. Just it always has been. The NBA doesn't have the rich history that Major League Baseball has, because if you look at the NBA, I mean, you look at the 60s and into the 70s and even in the 50s, a lot of people don't even regard that era a lot in basketball as really being anything. You know, people really start regarding the history of basketball when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson entered the league in the 70s, and then in the 80s when Michael Jordan came in the league. So relatively, that's not a long history, considering that baseball goes all the way back into the early 1900s with the Bronx Bombers, right? Murderers Row. It even goes back into the 1800s, actually, with like the whole dead ball era and all that stuff, right? And so baseball uses its history a lot. That's why also it's nicknamed America's pastime. And the reason why I think that there are still fans of Major League Baseball is because of the history. So I don't understand why they want to introduce these city jerseys in baseball now, because that's what the Red Sox were donning this weekend. And their jerseys, we all know what the Red Sox jersey looks like. It's the classic white jersey, their home jerseys anyways. It's white with obviously the red lettering and Red Sox. And then you also have the dark cap, and you have the B on the hat, or in some cases you sometimes have just the actual Red Sox on their hat, depending on whichever logo they're going with. That's a classic look. And baseball went and and Nike and baseball kind of went and fumbled that. Their jerseys that they were wearing this weekend were gold and light blue. Like, what? That doesn't even make sense. A few years ago, my favorite team, the Detroit Tigers, they changed the size of their logo. So we all know the Tigers logo is the English D. What they ended up going to do is they went and increased the size of the English D on their hats, on their jerseys, on all that stuff. They only did that for a year before they went back to the original size because people hated it. Like, people absolutely hated it. And made it known that they didn't like it, and then they ended up going back to the smaller English D. So, like, I don't want the Detroit Tigers to have city jerseys. Like, I don't want the New York Yankees to have city jerseys. Like, the Yankees jersey, the Yankees uniform is classic. Like, that's what it is. That's iconic in baseball. And I know I sound like the old baseball get off my lawn type guy, but I'm all for integrating. I'm all for trying to bring awareness and to bring intrigue to younger people. But that's why I think if you had more days like Jackie Robinson days, where you remembered icons of the sport, like, again, Jackie Robinson, Roberto Clemente, those are historic figures in the game of baseball. If you had more days to recognize them and to show what they did, not just on the field but off the field as well, I think that would inspire the young people of today, because that's just what our social climate is. And I think that baseball needs to do a better job at that. Now, baseball took a step forward this offseason by finally recognizing the Negro League as part of the major leagues. And so now they're integrating the Negro League stats into the Major League stats, which is something, A, that baseball should have done a long time ago, and B, they did it because they wanted brownie points for where we are right now in the world with social justice and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, it got done, and it's getting done, and they're in the process of doing it, and very much deserving. Like, again, these players that played in the Negro League, I've been to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and they have a section in the Baseball Hall of Fame dedicated to the Negro League. And it's definitely not big enough. And what I always keep going back to is, if it weren't for the color of these people's skin, they would have been icons in Major League Baseball. Like, icons. But because of the color of their skin, they weren't allowed to play. And the unfortunate thing is, not a lot of them got to play in the Major League. Some of them did, obviously, after Jackie Robinson. After Jackie Robinson came from was the Negro League. And so a lot of players did get to go play, but there were a lot of great players in the Negro League that never got a chance to play in the major leagues because, again, that was segregation back in the 30s and 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? And it's like I said, it's taken way too long for Major League Baseball to actually recognize the Negro League as actually part of the major leagues. This is something that needed to be done a lot sooner, but at least it's getting done. And I'd rather baseball honor its past rather than try to completely change its future. This is the problem that baseball has. Baseball changes things that don't need to be changed. Like, again, the time of game, the length of games this year's already more than it was last year with all these changes that they keep making. And they changed and they put a runner at second base to start extra innings, which honestly, I mean, the regular season I don't think matters as much. If you get into the postseason, I don't want that in the postseason. You know, and the whole relievers thing, that was supposed to cut down your time and the usage of relievers, and it hasn't done anything. They change things that don't need to be changed. And this is something, bringing in these city jerseys, you don't need to change it. What you need to do is recognize the past, recognize some of these iconic pioneers in baseball, and celebrate them more. That will bring awareness to them, to the sport, and that will help bring younger people into the sport. It just will. That's why I love baseball. I love baseball because of the history of baseball. Because trust me, the modern day game of baseball is extremely boring. Like Gary Sheffield came out and said that he doesn't watch baseball anymore because it's so boring. Yeah, it is. It's incredibly boring. With shifts and all that stuff. That's a whole conversation for another day. But the basis is baseball has to attract younger people. How are they going to do it? They believe that by partnering with Nike, by doing these city jerseys, is the way that it's going to be done. I don't think that... I'm a young person, and those jerseys looked awful. They did nothing for... They did nothing for the city of Boston, in my opinion, and they did nothing for the game of baseball. They looked ugly. And a lot of people online were bashing Major League Baseball, or bashing Nike, or making fun of Nike for these jerseys that they came up with for the Red Sox. And again, if you don't... Again, this is the trend that baseball's going to follow because, oh, well, look, the NBA does it and it's cool. Yeah, well, the NBA is a lot different than what Major League Baseball is. The NBA is a lot younger. It's got a lot younger fan base than what Major League Baseball has. Major League Baseball doesn't need to change all that stuff. They need to integrate more about, to me, they need to integrate more about their history, celebrate it, have some of these younger people in the younger generations learn about some of these iconic players. And some of these just icons that honestly don't get the level of recognition that they deserve really nationally. Only within the sport do they get recognized, but nationally they deserve to get recognized even more. And I feel like Major League Baseball can really do that. You start looking at the other sports leagues. I mean, hockey would be the only other one that could do it, and in all honesty, hockey doesn't have that much diversity. Whereas baseball has a ton of diversity. Play off of that diversity. Again, if you wanted to do this in Miami, like you wanted to have these city jerseys in Miami, it'd be completely different because the city of Miami, the culture is completely different than what it is in Boston. And honestly, I loved the Marlins jerseys when they had more of the orange and they were more bright and they were more colorful. I felt like that was more of a Miami staple. Their jerseys now are kind of dark and I don't really necessarily like them all that much. Like my cousin has what I think is a pretty dope looking hat of the Marlins, and it's orange with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a black brim. And the M is like, you got white, you got a little bit of teal in there. Like it looks really cool. And that was what they did. That's what they had before when like Giancarlo Stanton was there. And all of a sudden now they've changed it and they're gone like dark and they're like kind of like purplish, blackish with the white kind of tealish jersey. Like I wish that they would be a little bit more bright and colorful because that's their culture and I completely understand that. But if you were like the Dodgers or the Tigers or the Cubs or the Yankees or the Red Sox, these are iconic jerseys. These have been around since the beginning of baseball, since the beginning of these organizations. Why are you going and changing them? Again, that's why I think that So I feel like Jackie Robinson deserves more than what he gets, and I really don't think that these city jerseys deserve anything more than what they're going to get, because I don't think they deserve anything because they don't look that great. And you're taking away from what baseball actually is. Like, why not celebrate Esteban Enrique Bellion? I mean, I guarantee you I could tell you any baseball fan that guy's name and nobody would know who that is. That was the first Latino player in Major League Baseball. Why can't we celebrate him? You know, for a lot of the Latino players, I mean, probably a lot of Latino players don't really know who he is either. I'm not saying that I have no idea. But I'm just saying, why don't we celebrate him as well? Why, again, celebrate Jackie Robinson more? Celebrate Roberto Clemente. Some of these, like, icon pioneers. And again, celebrate Ted Williams and Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and all these legendary players. Let the younger generation learn about these players. And again, if we can get back to kind of playing like how they did, again, you don't want to play in the dead ball era, obviously, but getting rid of these shifts and stuff like that, I think that's going to help baseball grow way more than what these city jerseys are going to do for Major League Baseball. That's just my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it, and I vote for more Jackie Robinson days. I vote for more days where we get to celebrate baseball's history. That's just what I vote for. All right, coming up out of the break, we're going to get into the no-hitter that happened between the Cleveland Indians and the Chicago White Sox. Carlos Rodon, the White Sox, threw the second no-hitter of the season. We'll talk about his performance, and we'll get into our series of the week. Stay tuned. Hello, it's the J-Man again, here to talk about my new show, The J-Man Show, a part of the new podcast series from J-Man Sports. It's out with the old and in with the new. The J-Man Show takes over for the old podcast, but will add its own flavor. Join me each and every week as we discuss and have fun with sports news. You can stream the J-Man Show exclusively on the new J-Man Sports YouTube channel. The J-Man Show, anything sports. Alrighty, welcome back. So like we mentioned before, White Sox lefty Carlos Rodon became the second pitcher this year to throw a no-hitter. He threw it on the south side of Chicago against the Cleveland Indians on April 14th. That was a Wednesday. And he pitched fantastic. Pitched 9 innings, no hits, 7 strikeouts, no walks. The only blemish he had was he hit Roberto Perez with a slider, and it came a couple inches away from basically being a perfect game. And if you know baseball and you know who Carlos Rodon is, you'd be so happy for him, because this is a guy that when he came up with the White Sox, he was a top of the rotation type guy. He looked like he was going to be... It was going to be him and Chris Sale at the top of that rotation for years with the White Sox. And the unfortunate part about Carlos Rodon was the injury bug caught him. And he's had so many different injuries over the past few years. Shoulders and elbows and forearms and legs and core. He's had so many injuries that it was very nice to see him kind of get to that mountaintop and to pitch a no-hitter, because if there's really any guy that really deserved it would be Carlos Rodon. It would also be a guy like Joe Musgrove, because Musgrove, the week before, was a very similar story. Injury bug had kind of caught him, and he'd been hurt. He'd been in the bullpen. He'd been in the rotation multiple times, and he'd gone back and forth. And so it's nice to see kind of those guys get to the mountaintop and pitch no-hitters, and pitch the way that they did. They both pitched fantastically. They weren't like 140 pitches, 7 walk performances. Again, they were just slightly over 100 pitches, or close to 100 pitches, and not allowing a hit and not allowing a walk, only 1 hit batter. That was what Joe Musgrove had and what Carlos Rodon had. So, tremendous performance, and really great pitching performance in that series, also with Giolito for the White Sox and Shane Bieber for the Indians. I mean, they dueled it out. They both went over 8 innings scoreless. I mean, Shane Bieber would have been named the AL Player of the Week if it weren't for Carlos Rodon throwing a no-hitter, because he had something like 13 strikeouts in 9 innings and didn't allow a run, which is like the classic pitcher's duel right there. Like both aces going deep into ball games, and that's the trend I'm seeing in Major League Baseball that I like. I mentioned it after the first weekend, and I was a little bit nervous that there was going to be more of a trend of pitchers being taken out earlier, rather than managers allowing them to go deeper into ball games. But right now, I'm seeing a lot of pitchers going 6 innings consistently, going into the 7th inning, and I like to see that. I really and honestly do, because that's where I think the baseball's really good, when you have those pitching matchups. No offense to what the Tampa Bay Rays do, and no offense to the whole idea of the opener. It's a fine idea. The problem is, to me, for a course of 162 games, you can't do it. In the postseason, I think it's very much not effective. I think that I've seen it in the postseason be a little bit effective, but I've also seen the postseason be completely non-effective. And I think it's nice to do here and there when you don't have the starters to be able to do it. Again, if you're Tampa or if you're Oakland, or if you suffer some injuries in your rotation and you need to kind of do that whole opener thing, I understand it. But baseball is better when you've got 2 pitchers going off against each other and they are dueling it out for 6, 7, 8, 9 innings, because it's a great game to watch. You're watching a masterpiece at that point. Like Sunday's matchup between the Dodgers and the Padres, it was Bauer and Snell, which is a great pitching matchup, but Bauer went 6 innings and Snell went 5. And both guys were a little bit wild and they didn't go deep into the ball game. And they both didn't allow runs, and I would have liked to have seen them go deeper into the game. I would have loved to see them go each into the 7th inning or into the 8th inning. And so there's still improvements that I think that teams have to make in doing this, but I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing in Major League Baseball, that they're allowing starters, especially top of the rotation guys, to go deeper into ball games. Like, I was watching the Yankees game a little bit yesterday, and I was watching it on the Yes Network, and they said that, Garrett Cole gets a little frustrated when he doesn't go 7 innings. He gets a little frustrated. And, I mean, if you're Garrett Cole, yeah, you would be, because you are basically the only pitcher the Yankees have. If you look at the ERA without him in it, the rest of the starting staff, they have almost a 7 ERA in that rotation. So he is literally the only pitcher in that rotation. Literally the only one. So, yeah, he gets paid to go deep into ball games. He doesn't get paid to go max out for 5 innings and that's it, or to go max out for 4 innings and that's it. Like, I know I've been talking, and I brought up my fandom with the Detroit Tigers, and I try not to do that on this program just because, again, I try to talk about all Major League Baseball teams, but like what Matthew Boyd has done this season, he's not striking out as many batters, but he's going deeper into ball games. I like that. He's pitching in the zone more. And even if you go back and you look at Sunday or Saturday's start with Casey Mize, yeah, you know what? He allowed, 3 home runs in that game? Got roughed up a little bit, 4 runs, 3 home runs, 2-run home run, and 3 solo home runs. But he was pounding the strike zone. He made it through 5 innings. Which, I mean, for a young pitcher, is fantastic. I want to see him go to 6. I want to see him get into the 6th inning and battle like I used to watch with Justin Verlander. Like, Justin Verlander, when he's with the Tigers, if you're going to get to him, you had to get to him early, because that's when he wasn't completely on. But as soon as it got past, as soon as he went through the lineup one time, you were done. You were done. If you could, that first time through, if you could get to him, that was the best chance you had. After that, the adjustments that he made and the stuff that he had, and he used to be the classic guy that would just battle. Like, even if he didn't have his good stuff, or even a guy like Roy Halladay, who, again, I grew up watching these two guys, and I idolized these two guys. Like, I idolized Roy Halladay. I loved Roy Halladay. When he was with the Blue Jays, and then when he went to the Phillies, I loved Roy Halladay. Like, classic guy of just battling it out. Like, not having your great stuff all the time, but going 6, 7 innings. That's the makeup of a good pitcher. And unfortunately, there are trends right now in the big leagues where it's max out for as long as what you can, and then we bring in bullpen guys. We bring in the bullpen to help you out. And I don't necessarily love that trend. And I like seeing that managers are allowing their pitchers to go deeper. I love seeing that A.J. Hinch allows Casey Mize to go deeper into ball games. I love that we saw Carlos Rodon get to pitch his no-hitter and Joe Musgrove get to complete his no-hitter. Because I think in seasons past, especially this early, you would have seen way more of the bullpen coming in earlier, like around the 80, 85 pitch mark, rather than allowing these guys to go out and compete in the pitch. Because that's what baseball is. Baseball is those one-on-one matchups, that the pitchers versus the pitchers, the batters versus the batters, the pitcher versus the batter, and the whole how is that pitcher going to get that batter out, and what's he going to use. And that's what makes baseball great. And it's very nice to see that we are seeing that trend come back into Major League Baseball, and that these pitchers are going deeper into games, and that we're seeing pitchers have success. And again, early on we usually see pitchers have success, but I think this year we're seeing a lot more pitchers' success than what we have in years past. I mean, again, look at the amount of almost no-hitters we've had. We've had, I think, 4, 5, 6 almost no-hitters. We've had 2 no-hitters already this year. I mean, it's tremendous. It's awesome to watch. It's awesome to watch pitching duels like that. No offense to anybody in the bullpen, but watching a bullpen game isn't fun. That's why the postseason to me isn't that interesting, because too often is players and managers, so I should say teams and managers, get into their bullpens way too soon, and the game's just not as fun at that point. More fun when you've got the Smoltz versus Morris, right? Like in the postseason, and these two guys are dueling it out. Or you've got the Giolitos and the Biebers dueling it out. That's what you love to see in baseball, and I like to see that trend. Alrighty, it is now time to end our program on the series of the week. So here we go. Series of the week. Alright, so the series that I am looking forward to the most begins on Thursday, and that is the Dodgers-Padres from Los Angeles, a 4-game weekend series in LA. Padres currently sitting at 10-7, Dodgers sitting at 13-3. This past weekend series was exciting. It literally felt like every game, it was a 3-game series, it felt like every game came down to the wire. It felt like a rivalry. You had the back and forth. You had the fans in San Diego chanting "Beat LA." You had the whole Kershaw-Profar incident with the catcher's interference, and then you had again Mookie Betts' walk-off catch in the 9th inning on Saturday, and then you had the Padres coming back on Sunday, winning it in the later innings. I am incredibly excited for the 4-game series starting this Thursday with the Padres and the Dodgers. This is two teams that are going to be going at it all season long. Like, these are two teams that are going to be postseason teams if they're all healthy. They can stay healthy. They're postseason teams, and they're battling it out for the division. The Dodgers have owned the Padres in recent history. The Padres have kind of been beat up by the Dodgers. And they're kind of in the butt end of jokes with Dodger fans, right? Because, again, the Dodgers just pound on the Padres. But now the Padres, are getting up. And it's kind of like that sibling rivalry, right? Because they play, obviously, in the state of California. And so it's kind of like that sibling rivalry where you got the older sibling in the Dodgers that, continually, wins in the head-to-head fights. But now the Padres are a little bit more experienced. They're a little bit older. They're a little bit exciting to watch. And they're coming up now, and they can actually challenge this Dodgers team. And I think baseball needs this, because the Yankees-Red Sox is not a rivalry. For one, the Yankees have owned that series for the last number of years. And yeah, okay, you know what? The Yankees are having their struggles right now, and the Red Sox are doing fantastic right now. But in all honesty, that's not a rivalry as of right now. And baseball kind of needs their rivalries. They again, all sports leagues need their rivalries. And so if they can have the Dodgers and Padres be that rivalry that is must watch, that baseball fans, that sports fans want to watch, I'm all for it. And again, it used to be the Dodgers and the Giants. And Dodgers and Giants obviously are still rivals. But again, it hasn't meant anything the last number of years because the Giants haven't been all that successful. But right now, the Padres are right there, and they're on the cusp, and they got to beat this team. They got to beat the Dodgers if they want to go anywhere deep into the postseason. And again, we saw it this past weekend. We're going to see it next weekend, and that's why I am ecstatic to watch next week's series between the Padres and the Dodgers in LA. First game is Thursday the 22nd at 10 p.m. First pitch in Los Angeles. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And don't worry, you definitely will be hearing from me soon.